all have to be able to reach and mark and draw on the piece of paper. If one person tries to do it, you will get further and further and further behind. Okay? So everybody has to be able to do their little part as we go through. You have a template, and actually there's one or two things that we'll have to add as we go along on the template. You have to listen to the story. Let's start out in England. Okay? We've talked about them. You know, of course, the 13 colonies and all that good stuff. We're going to get there. But if we look at England in the 1700s, that's what you would see a lot of, farmland. Okay. If you think of England during this time period, just think of like your villages. Yeah, there's London, there's some larger cities, but really most people live in the countryside. Okay, I want you to draw a river across your paper. Connect the east and the west. That's left, right, guys. Okay. 1 inch wide, roughly, and you've got just about 25 seconds to do that. Okay, quickly, guys, about 15 seconds. You can go back and sort of shade in. You have a river, so now you're going to need a way to get across it. So just a simple wooden bridge. And you don't want to make the bridge like as big as my forearm. Okay? Go by the template that you have on your desk. Okay? So you can put it wherever you want to. Now, we talked about the Romans and their roads. The Incas had their roads. Okay? I want you to draw 2 roads. One that runs north to south, where it will cross over the bridge. Yeah. And one running from east to west. They don't have to be a straight line. I mean, most roads aren't.
With more travel. Robert Frost would not have traveled east.
One church, a cemetery, a store, a pub, a coal mine, and 50 trees. Now, this is where you all have to participate, okay, and work together and look at the template. And I'm going to give you 1 minute. You have 1 minute. This new revolution, okay, is going to basically make it cheaper for raw materials, because that's what you're going to use these canals for, not just for people to go on canoe trips. Okay, coal can now be transported all around England because you don't just have to depend on the rivers. Since you've invested your money, now you can afford to buy a really nice home. And I think the nice house, it looks sort of like a castle. If you will pick a place to draw that. So you are a wealthy entrepreneur now because you built this canal. Doesn't matter. No, guys, you have to go by the template that you have in front of you. Just follow the directions. Okay?
There's nothing on that is colored. Aren't canals like rivers, little mini built rivers?
There is a population explosion in England. Okay? And your village. The bubonic plague, which we've talked about before, is pretty much no longer a threat. Okay? And notice what people have learned to do. Instead of dumping waste into the rivers, now they what?
Put in the canals.
In the canals and then the ocean. Since we have a population explosion, you need to add 5 houses. The farmers start to practice certain things like crop rotation. instead of planting the same old crop in this field and using up the same old nutrients, you may let this field lie fallow or empty and then grow corn here and beans there and then rotate the crop around like it says. There are new fertilizers besides just manure. Livestock breeding becomes important. Just like breeding dogs, you can breed cattle and so forth. Consequently, farm production skyrockets. But there's one problem. Most farmers own one piece of land. Why should they, or how could they, invest in all of these machines? What's more, it's impossible to buy land because think about it, in Europe, for centuries, who owns most of the land? The lords, the nobles, okay? So the average peasant can't buy the land. So the parliament at the time decides that pretty much they're going to help you out. They provide what we call the commons. There's a series of laws called the Enclosures Act. They're passed by Parliament, and what this means is landowners can buy government-owned land, so to speak. Now, I want you to fence off a 3 by 3 inch area reserved as the commons. So this is like that government property that people can buy and farm on.
My room is all messed up.
It's called the water frame. Most of this cloth and thread before had been made in people's homes. Okay? It was called the cottage industry. He calls his new machine the water frame because its source of power came from water. Okay? It's not that it had anything to do with baking or purifying water. It made thread and cloth. So let's imagine you have the first water frame that comes to your village, okay? Because you have a river. Water frame's large, so you can't just have it in someone's living room, okay? Like the old spinning jennies, which I'll show you a picture of that later. So what you've basically done is built the first factory. Have we talked about factories before? No. Okay? So, at a factory, look at your template, and remember there's no smoke because it is water powered. Okay? Put your factory next to the river. It has to be along the river because that's how you get the power. Okay? I don't like this town. Just jump in with them. They can sort of fill you in. Hey, you got 30 seconds. Yeah. So what they end up doing is they end up going to work in the factories. There's a large number of poor families who've lost their livelihood due to the Enclosure Act, who now they can't work as a farmer. Because what's actually happened is, guess who ends up buying up all the land that was sold off by the government? No. The small guy or the rich farmers? The rich farmers, okay? So if you're a farmer without land, you either work as for someone like a tenant farmer, or you go to work in the factory. So most people end up moving from the countryside to villages, okay? Which is a form of migration. Now, add 15 houses, a church, a pub, and a store. Because you have all these new factory workers moving to your village. Okay? Guys, the time will start to diminish more and more as we go through.
Here.
1776, year of the Declaration of Independence. Okay? Your first textile factory, which, by the way, what are textiles?
Clothes.
Okay, clothes. Okay, cloth, basically. Okay, fabric. You've basically gotten rich, and in this case, Richard Arkwright, if you'll join this group, Dan, they can fill you in. Okay, he becomes the first millionaire. Guys, if you're a millionaire in 1776, what would that be in today's?
Like the trillions of
At least billions. I mean, this is like being a billionaire. Okay, now, where there's money, hey, listen please, there is a point besides just drawing. Okay, when people see profits and money being made, it attracts competitors. Okay, just like today in the technology business, the health industries out there, when people see you making money, they're going to come out and try to do the same thing. So 5 new factories. The early owners of these factories called themselves capitalists, which is a key term. Basically, they're the ones with the money to do the building and the buying of the raw materials so they can make these textiles. So, 5 factories. No smoke, and guess they have to be next to the river, because that's where your power's from. And I'll go ahead and give you the heads up, you need to add houses because workers. Okay, 10 seconds. When you're finished, if you'll look back at the TV screen, you'll just look up and tell me what that is.
It's a tenant house.
It's an apartment.
Okay, apartment building, the term tenement, okay? I think you have it on your template. 1780. Here's the problem. The people that start to flood in, they're looking for jobs. Okay, are you going to have the jobs? That's going to be the question. Even though they're not making much money, they still keep coming into the village because, guys, if you're a farmer and there's no farm, your family's going to starve. So they come to the cities or the village. The problem is you can't keep building those little single-family homes. Okay? So what happens is tenements are built, apartment buildings. Okay? Add 5 tenements, and we'll give you about 20 seconds to do that. What was your experience while you were playing the urbanization game? Before we even answer the question, what does the term urbanization mean?
Developing cities.
A lot of stress.
What about cities?
Developing them.
Developing of cities, sort of the development process. The process of people moving from the countryside to cities. Okay, experience during the game?
Stress.
Okay. Do you think that was the intent?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, why? Someone raise their hand so I can. Okay, Kendall?
Because there was a lot going on in a short period of time.
Yeah, because what did we go from like 1700 to 1750 and, or what, 1850, sorry. Wasn't that a pretty big change from where we started? Okay, that is something you're going to notice that as we go through, there's going to be more and more changes in smaller and smaller periods of time. Guys, when I was your age, there was no such thing as a cell phone. Okay, you did not get on the internet. And guys, that's been within the last 30 years. I mean, the amount of information today doubles like every 10 years, and it's probably even quicker than that. So, stressful, anything else?
It was kind of confusing.
Okay, confusing?
It took a lot of thinking because you had to figure out where you were going to put whatever was required.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Do you see why cities have planning boards now?
Yeah.
There's actually forms of engineering, like urban type engineering, where you try to plan these things. Now, think about it. Do people get replaced by machines today?
Yes.
Did people get replaced by machines during this time period? There's actually a group in England in the 1800s called the Luddites, and they were anti-machinery. You know why? Because it took their jobs. Okay? But what's the benefit of all this machinery?
Mass production.
Mass production. The clothes you're wearing right now, you wouldn't have as many outfits if they were all still made in someone's cottage by hand. You would not go to your closet and go, I wonder what I'm going to wear today.
Guess I wear this
What? What?
I guess I wear this again.
Yeah. I mean, you would have maybe 1 or 2 outfits. If you were lucky, you would have 2. I mean, you're lucky now. I mean, you look at what you have. I mean, you can't even keep up with all the stuff we have, right? I mean, you lose your jacket, you're like, I got nothing. But during this time, you know, this is when all that changes. Now, what's the negative side of it, though? What was the negative? Okay, what?
People become materials.
Yeah, because you know what? Those factories, they got to keep selling stuff, right?